Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing amazing. This is episode 4 of the Manly Mission podcast, and I'm your host, Farhan Rana. Um, and I'm really grateful that you're spending your time with me today because we have an amazing topic that we're going to be talking about, and I think this will be useful for a lot of you guys. And just before we get started, if you're listening on YouTube, I really appreciate a like and a subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave your honest review and your rating. That would be really appreciated as well. Uh, Before we dive in, I'd like to give you something which is related to today's topic, and it's a free 7-day workout guide that I've created, knowing that a lot of you guys need something that's structured and hits all the major muscle areas. So if you go to farhanrana.com/workout, you can get it there for free, and it's a 7-day workout plan that's laid out for you. So for each day, you know exactly what you're going to be hitting and what you need to be doing. So just go there to Farhan Rana. So that's FARHANRANA.com/workout, and you can grab it right there. And just before we get started, I just want to give a preface to this video and say that much of what I'm going to be talking about is from my own experience working out for about 2 years at this point. And some of it does come from a lot of YouTube channels I've listened to and what they've said in terms of advice. And one in particular, First Man, I want to give him a shout out because he's been really influential in terms of really laying this out in a way that is simple and practical. So if you want to check out what I'm going to about to say in more detail and see what this looks like, he's further along in the journey, so I would definitely give him a check and see how he's implementing this into his life in addition to all the amazing content he already puts out. So first things first, your manly body will, when we think about when we envision a manly body, it's a strong one. It's one that if it doesn't need to be like anything crazy, but it is a strong one. That's the first point. That's just visually and just from even a conceptual point of view. That's what we're thinking of when we think of a manly body. So the first step naturally that we should be focusing on is on getting strong as our foundation. And I'm just going to say this: your gains will really not reach their full potential if you're not building a solid base of strength to start out with. And what this means practically is really getting strong in the big compound movements. So those would be your squat, your bench press, deadlift, your overhead press. These are the foundational movements that you should be starting out with, especially if you're early on in the journey or if you're someone who's coming back into this. This is something that you should be focusing on and giving more of your attention to. And I'll explain why more specifically in a little bit. But what you want to be doing in terms of designing a workout plan is really focus on progressive overload. So really putting on 5 to 10 pounds of weight every time you go in and hit these movements. And it's good to have a goal, a destination that you're reaching for. So I would say for anyone who's beginning or anyone who's going to be focusing on this, the goals you want to be hitting are, I'm going to put this in terms of American units. So that's going to be 135 pounds on your overhead press, 225 for squat, for bench, 315 for squat, and 405 for deadlift. Easy way to think about this is 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be the system that you would be working on, and those would be the goals that you're hitting. And while these goals are they're not going to fit everyone perfectly. If you're a taller guy, it might take you longer. If you're shorter, whatever the case may be, depending on your physique and how your limbs are, how your overall structure works. You'll have to adjust these based on what's going on in terms of you putting on weight on these exercises. But I would say that these goals are definitely a good general guideline that you should be striving for. And I would say that even if you hit these to 80% of in terms of weight, you'd be really, really strong. You'd be stronger than most guys at the gym, and it would reflect in terms of your muscle growth because this is another common misconception that a lot of people have, is that strength is not correlated with size or with muscle gain. That couldn't be further from the truth, especially if you have those newbie gains coming into play and you're someone who's being consistent with their diet and nutrition. and recovery as well. Like the getting strong on these exercises, I could see for myself as well. This is something that I experienced the first time I really took this seriously. 3 months in late 2019 when I really got in the gym and I was just focusing on these movements almost exclusively, which I shouldn't have done. Um, I really saw that come into play in terms of just my shoulders and my overall body just becoming more bigger and having more dense musculature on it. Um, and if you, in terms of timeline, what I would say is that if you did these movements, which I'm talking about, and you added in accessory movements to really strengthen the muscles, which go into adding more weight on these movements, you're looking at 6 to 12 months of really focusing on getting strong. And that's just for the 6 months is really on the early end. Say if you've had some experience with working out, you could reach that in 6 months or 12 months. If you're really starting out, you have a busy schedule as it is with work or school, then I would say 12 months is really what you should be aiming for. Obviously, you could get there early depending on if you really pick up the slack in terms of getting more consistent in the gym and fixing your nutrition and recovery. But I want to give you guys the realistic timeline for this, because I think a lot of what's happened on YouTube or just the general online fitness space is that people have gotten this wrong sense of what it actually takes to build a manly body or just an aesthetic physique. And I was in this boat. I'm assuming a lot of you guys are, but we developed this unrealistic expectation for when or how we should be in the best shape of our lives. And people have this thing of we're like, oh, in the next 3 months I want to be jacked and shredded and strong and look great on the beach and everything. Like, that's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen unless you're at a point where you've already been putting in the work and it would just take a further 3 months. But that's not the case for most of you guys. So just keep that in mind. This first phase, as I'll call it, is really the bulking phase or getting strong phase. It's going to take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. I'm giving you a wide range to work in, just because this first phase is really going to vary depending on who you are, what you're doing, and how your workouts are really working out for you. The second phase is cutting. And the reason why I'm including this here is because what you want to do at this point is really get down to anywhere from 10 to 14% body fat. And we do this for two main reasons. One, because when you're cutting down and you start to shed the fat and see what your muscle gains look like, you'll be able to isolate and see, okay, these are my weaknesses. I should really be focusing on these when we get to the third phase, which I'll talk about more. But from a mental standpoint, if you've been bulking for a long time, 12 months, say you did this for a year, you'll get to a certain point where you'll be like, well, what's this actually looking for me in terms of like visual? Like when I look in the mirror, I just look like a bulky, you could say even fatter version of myself. And even though I'm strong, it's not the actual goal I'm looking for. So at this point, when you've done a lot of your bulking and you've gotten strong and you've generally hit the goals I set out for you, this would be a good time to cut down to, on the slightly heavier side, 14% body fat, but ideally if you can get closer to 10%, that would be even better for long term, what we're going to do long term. And so it would really benefit you to do this, because it's just a necessary step in this process. You're not done. Say you even get to 10% body fat, you're not done at this point. You're only really halfway. And what you need to be doing in terms of diet, this should be pretty self-explanatory. You can be in a calorie deficit, still keep your protein intake high, and your workouts, what they need to look like is more or less of what you were doing in the first phase, but you'll obviously scale down the frequency and or intensity of what you were doing, just so you can keep up with your calorie deficit and not feel fatigued more than you need to be. Because, this is going to be the other point, you shouldn't extend this more than, I would say, 2 to 4 months. Just because you want to keep this short, you want to keep it intense, and you really want to shed the fat as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Just because if you drag this along for too long, you'll lose motivation and you'll just feel tired and you'll feel crappy, and you'll have what comes along with fat loss is just feeling more like a lesser version of yourself in terms of strength and who you were in terms of intensity. So what you really want to do is just keep this short, keep it really focused, and what that means, what that requires of you is really discipline and consistency. You really need to see this through, because if you get to a point where like halfway through the cut you're like, I'm really feeling crappy, like I my energy levels are all over the place, I can't sleep right. Um, Obviously there's ways to mitigate that. I'm not saying like you shouldn't. There are ways to go around this. But if you just stop like halfway through and you're like, yeah, I can't do this anymore, I just want to go back to bulking, or just want to maintain, like you're really selling yourself short, because you have no idea like of where you could be. Just give it like another, if you're halfway through this, maybe another 6 to 8 weeks, 6 or 12 weeks, whatever the case may be. And you can really be in a place where you can look at the end of that and be like, okay, I'm more lean than I ever was before. I'm seeing muscle gains on me, and I look fantastic. And that's really where you want to be at the end of this. You want to be mentally and physically in a good place, because this will really set the foundation for what you're going to be doing for the next two phases after this. So the next phase after this is going to be your, what First Man calls as well, and I agree with him. He calls it the aesthetic bulk. Um, because at the end of your cut, you would have realized that certain muscle areas are just lacking because you didn't hit them enough, or just based on your genetics and physique, that's just how you were built. So, for example, if you get towards the end of your cut and you say, well, my chest looks kind of small, I really want to work on that because it just looks smaller in proportion to my shoulders and arms. What you would do at this point is you would do a 3 to 4 month bulk, but it wouldn't be so much focusing on strength. You still want to do some strength work, just so you keep up that momentum going. But you would really just focus on those weak areas. So let's just pick two, for example. Maybe it's your chest and your quads. You really want to work on those. So as a general guideline, you would go for 3 to 4 times a week hitting these muscle groups. And that would set you up really well in terms of really seeing development and improvement in those areas. And obviously keeping up with this caloric surplus. You don't need to do anything crazy, because if you're coming out from the lean successfully, as I laid out for you, and you're close to that 10 to 14% body fat, you really don't want to screw it up during this bulk. You really want to keep it slow and consistent, maybe adding like 200 to 400 calories per day, or averaging per day in terms of your intake. And that will really set you up really well, in terms of really improving those movements, those areas with the right movements. And you'll get, at the end of those 3 to 4 months, you'll really be in a good place where you'll obviously won't be as lean as you started out. You'll be close to it, obviously, but you'll really see improvement in those areas that you were hitting on, and you'll just start to complete the picture of your what I'm calling the manly body. But it's really just your physique as it's meant to be, depending on your genetics and what you have going for you. And then what we do is an aesthetic cut. This will be very similar to the first cut you did. Again, same things apply: calorie deficit, high protein. In terms of workouts, what you could do, you have really two options. One, you could kind of keep up with the areas you were focusing on, really just to nail those in and really keep those going. If you realize that those tend to be lagging behind other parts, you could do that. Or you could switch more to a full body kind of setup where you go back to a little bit of strength. Obviously, it won't be as intense because you're not bulking. Or just like an overall hypertrophy workout. Just because at this point you're 3/4 of the way there. It's really just about completing that picture. So you have more leeway in terms of what you want to do in terms of workouts. But same thing again, you want to keep this short, 2 to 4 months, so you really get down to those 10 to 40% body fat. And obviously include cardio as needed or as you want, because that will really help in really creating a more lean face, really cutting down the body fat, and just improving the overall circulation of nutrients and blood and water, and basically really complete that sort of shredded look that every guy's looking for. That should pretty much complete your fitness journey in terms of creating a manly body. So what happens after you've kind of done this? Well, first of all, I mean, you'll just like you'll I'll talk about more where I am. I'm obviously nowhere close to this, but I'm just, if I imagine what I'll feel like, I'll just feel like absolutely amazing. Um, and just in terms of timeline, you're looking at 2 to 3 years of doing this. It'll be a sprint in some ways and a marathon in others, because you're really just focusing on this almost on a daily basis because you have an end destination that you're working towards. But you understand that it's a marathon because you're not going to get there in 3 months, as many people mistakenly believe. So even from a mental standpoint, you'll kind of understand how goal setting works for your physique, and that will obviously trickle into other areas of your life. But I'm digressing. What I'm trying to say is that at this point, you'll be in elite shape, and you'll just feel absolutely amazing in terms of your confidence, your self respect, and how others view you, the attention you get, the respect you get from other men. That will just be on a totally another level. Um, and what you can be doing from this point on is really focusing on um, maintaining for the summer months if you want to look good for when you're out and people are, socializing, that kind of thing. And then what you can do from, say, September to December or January is go in a slight bulk, just because if you want to focus on getting strong in the gym again, and then cut again from February to March or April, even May, just so you have some sort of annual cycle going on. Um, or you could just maintain the whole time if that's what works for you, if that works for your schedule, whatever you have going on. Totally, that's something that you can do for sure. And just to give you some guys some inspiration for what you can do after this. Once you're in this kind of elite shape, it's really your playground after this. You can go in many different ways. If you always wanted to do endurance training, you wanted to run marathons, that kind of thing, like you're in the perfect position to do this. Um, and if you're wondering, well, won't I lose all the muscle mass I gained? If you do marathons like excessively, then yeah. Then I mean, if you're doing cardio, like if you're running miles on end every day, I mean, obviously it will. So do keep that in mind. But another thing that you can do, which won't impact your muscle as much, will be martial arts, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to doing once I'm kind of at the tail end of my journey. Is really getting into martial arts because I think as a man, having that awareness first of all, I mean, you develop good cardio because of the intense short sessions you're doing, and then obviously there's a sparring aspect to it where you learn to defend yourself and you learn to, how to navigate yourself in a 3D space, which I just know for myself that's going to be really important for me because I think a lot of us tend to live in this almost 2D kind of way where we move from from bed to desk to lunch to the dinner table to back to desk, back to bed. It's kind of this, we're not really moving in a way that we're supposed to move, not moving. We don't have this sense, this 3D sense. I don't think it's anyone's fault. It's just the kind of environment and age we live in where that's not emphasized, where that's not promoted, and it's certainly not on the minds of many guys who want to improve themselves, get on a fitness journey. That's not on their minds. And to some extent, I would say that's not a bad thing, because a lot of what fitness looks like is getting big, looking aesthetic, and there's nothing really wrong with that. What I'm saying is that you have many options at the end of your fitness journey in terms of putting on size and looking shredded, what you can do after this. And I would say martial arts is a fantastic way to really augment what you've done at this point and really is taken further in terms of becoming that functional, yet strong, yet lean man that you were meant to be this whole time. Um, and just a final point on martial arts, I think it's really important to have that knowledge of how to defend yourself and how to navigate, because no matter what circumstance you live in, whether you live in a rough neighborhood or not, having that kind of knowledge is just important. And it's funny, I was having this discussion with some of my friends just this past weekend, and we were talking about scenarios where if something came up, would you be able to defend yourself? Not necessarily get in a fight, but would you have that kind of aggression and kind of level of intimidation that fear factor, if you want to call it that. And a lot of that stems from having that self-confidence and really competence to back it up, and it does come from lifting, obviously, because your testosterone levels are going to be high. But martial arts is really, the most direct way to create that kind of intimidation when it's needed. Obviously, don't get into pointless fights and get yourself or your loved ones hurt. More, just keep yourself safe. Obviously, that's the first priority. But when it comes to it, you should know that how to navigate yourself in that kind of situation. So I told you guys I'd tell you where I currently am. I would say based on my fitness journey, and I'll be honest with you guys, like I haven't been as consistent as I should have been. So I seriously started taking this, seriously in late 2019. Obviously, the global thing happened and all the gyms were closed. So I had some equipment I was able to get by and build back from there. Um, and then once I really had my home gym come into play, like last year, is when I really started getting into compound movements again. And I'm honestly not restarting in that sense, but I would say maybe 1/3 to 1/4 on the lower end of the way in terms of the first phase. I've really set some ambitious goals in terms of lifting a certain amount of weight on those compound movements, and I should be good with those. I should reach most of them by within the next 3 to 6 months, depending on how everything goes in terms of work and school and that kind of stuff. So that's where I currently am. And just to go on that note, I will be bulking until the end of August, early September. I didn't mention this, like you should technically maintain for another month after your bulk is done, just to really have those gains solidified, really in place. Because I don't know the research on this or what even anecdotal evidence is about this. But I'm assuming if you go straight from a bulk to a cut, that would be maybe a drastic impact on your body. So you kind of want to ease into it. You want to maintain for maybe a couple of weeks and then start your cut. So I'll be doing that from September to maybe mid-October, on the early side of things, and then from that point on until December of this year or January of next year is when I'll be cutting and really seeing everything come into play for phase 2 of what I've talked about. So I'll be applying what I'm talking about. I'm not just preaching to you guys. I really look forward to really putting these steps into place for myself and really showing the evidence of this. So you'll really, one, see how this actually works for someone who's actually doing this, and then B, if you want inspiration, someone to do this alongside you, well, I'm there with you guys. And just on that note, if you do want to follow my journey, obviously be posting it here. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can do that at Farhan Lifts. So FARHAN Lifts. So LIFTS. That's where I post all my fitness content, and you can follow along there. And just to close off on this topic, all of what I've talked about in terms of getting a great physique, something that looks better than the average guy walking down the street or even most guys who are in the gym, all of this is very achievable. It really comes down to your mindset and your self-belief. Um, if you believe that investing 2 to 3 years, honestly, even if you are 60 to 70% consistent, which you shouldn't be, but let's just say that's the case, and you have a really busy life, you have long work hours, you have a family, you have responsibilities on top of all of that. Even if it takes you 5 years to get to this point, wouldn't you say those 5 years are really worth it? Like you could look back on 5 years later and be like, well, I could have spent some time of that really going through those phases that Farhan talked about and really put myself in a position where my physique is really amazing and my health is on point and I look fantastic, and there's this sense of self, this sense of achievement and self-respect that you get out of it. I'm really looking forward to that. I can't tell you like how much like I really look forward to the point where all of those things really come into play for me. At In terms of timeline, I'm saying this will look like maybe late 23 um, early 24, late 2023 or early 2024 is really when I hope, inshallah, for all my Muslims, to really get to this point where um, my physique is just really looking on point, and I'm really proud of myself. Um, and I'm really looking forward to that. And what I want to tell you guys is that it's really all achievable. You can make all the excuses in the world. You can tell yourself that, I'm really busy. This isn't time for me, or I just don't know how, and because of that, I'm not going to do it. Which, if you don't know how, like I'm here for you. Like I told you in the very beginning, I'm giving you guys a free 7-day workout plan, which will do wonders for you if you're just starting out and you need something going for the next couple of months. You can grab that at farhanrana.com/workout. Um, and, I have a coaching program as well. But before I even talk about that, what I'm trying to say is that you have the ability to do this. Um, we sell ourselves short for some reason. We tell ourselves, like, hey, we can't, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. Or if you're brown or South Asian or whatever, you might even have like cultural influences kind of acting on this. You'll tell yourself, or others will tell you, that's not what that's not what brown guys do. Like, you're not supposed to get in shape. You're supposed to, make money, get good grades, and all the good stuff like that. Kind of financial or achievement-based success, if you want to call it that. Which I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't be successful financially. Um, but there's this whole component to male life which you're just disregarding if you say that fitness is not important. And I think there's this quote. I think that it comes from a Greek philosopher or something, but it goes along the lines of, "It's a shame for a man to not know the full capability of his physique and what his body is capable of." That's the gist of it, in terms of the quote. But that really rings true for me because we only have a short amount of time where, like, we're young adults or we're young people in general. Even say mid to late 40s is, you're still pretty young in that sense. Um, why would you not want to put in a little bit of time, a little bit of consistency, and really see something for yourself? Have that self-respect. Because um, I'll just tell you from my personal life, I never really had any achievements in terms of sports or creating like a community around me, having that charisma. Um, I was really good at school. That was there for sure. But I never really had the sense of achievement outside of that. And obviously, what filled that hole for me and that void, which I think it does for a lot of guys, is video games. Um, I wouldn't say I was a full on gamer playing like 12, 16 hours or whatever. But when I did play, it just gave me a sense of achievement, which was hard to find outside of school. Um, and because obviously didn't know any better, I wasn't involved in any sports or anything, so that just wasn't there for me. Um, that's another reason why fitness has been like a huge um, component of my life. Some people might see this, like friends and family, they'll be like, "Well, why are you so focused on fitness? Like, that's cool. You should work out. We're not saying you shouldn't be healthy and stuff, but why is this such a huge thing for you?" It is for me because, like, this this aspect of my life, which some people call like a cornerstone habit. Fitness is a cornerstone habit in that sense. It really gave me something to work towards every day. Like, I wasn't just like living this sort of mediocre lifestyle where, like, I go to work or school, come back, watch Netflix or play video games for 3 4 hours, go to sleep, repeat the cycle every single day, which is the case for a lot of people. But it really gave me something else to work on. It gave me something to strive for and achieve for. Um, and that's really been huge in terms of really improving my mentality when it comes to achieving goals. It is the driver for why I created this podcast and this whole business that I'm doing around men's self-improvement, because I think what I've experienced or what I've done is not out of the norm. I think a lot of guys have this sense of wanting to achieve something outside of work, or maybe like getting praise from family and friends for how they got that really nice house or that nice car, or like they got a promotion or whatever. I mean, that's cool. You should do that for sure. But I think there's this sort of raw male part of us that strives or really asks for something more. Um, And fitness is obviously the first component of that, because it's just that really using your body as not as a weapon necessarily, but really just as in really improving that extension of yourself. Because your body, I mean, this is going to get really metaphorical and everything, but I'll just say this: having a strong body, having a lean and capable body, functional body. I mean, that just goes a long way in terms of just a lot of things. I mean, it's just like think back a couple hundred years ago. If you weren't strong, you were not gonna make it. If you lived in a tribal sort of society, like you would, if you were just laying around and didn't do anything, you would be outcast. Even worse, if you just didn't know how to fend for yourself. So I think from a raw sort of primitive kind of way, having a strong and capable body is just taps into that kind of raw instinct that a lot of will, which all guys have, and it's just a shame that we don't really put a lot of focus into this. And I think starting out with aesthetics and wanting a nice body that's gets attention, that kind of thing. I mean, it's not the end goal, obviously, but it's a step in the right direction. And as you continue that journey, as you move along, like I've said in the last podcast, you course correct as you go along. Not only in terms of what you're actually doing, but also your mentality and the reasons for why you're doing this. I think it's almost a meme at this point where like a guy gets heartbreak and he goes into the gym and he's doing it to get on, get back at his ex or whatever, but it really turns into this journey of self-improvement and really finding yourself and becoming that fulfilled and accomplished, male who's strong and capable and all this good stuff. So I know that was a long sort of deep dive into mindset and what I've been doing and what I've been experiencing, but it just gives more. The reason why I even did all of this is just I think it gives more context to what I'm talking about. Like I could give you just the steps of like, hey, these are the 4 phases, and this is what you should do, and these are the workouts and stuff. But I think all of this requires a sort of more deep dive discussion in terms of why we should do this in the first place. Because if we don't have a strong why, if we don't have like a reason to keep going, we're just going to be in this place where like we'll be like, yeah, I know I should get in shape. I know I should be strong. I know I should do martial arts, but I'm just not going to do it because it's not worth my time. Or like, why should I do it? Like most guys like who are just weak and we get by. Like we have nice salaries and everything. Like we're doing just fine. That's just really selling yourself short, and I don't think you should do that. I'm telling you, like you have greatness in yourself. And the only reason I'm telling you that is because I believe I have greatness in myself. Not just in terms of fitness, not just in terms of business, but in all aspects of my life. If I really put my mind to it, like I'll get to a place where I can feel good about myself. It's not even about showing off to others or getting back at someone. It's really just about getting to a place in life where you've achieved something and you can be proud of it. And a strong body is not something that can be taken away. Unless you get sick and you have some medical condition, obviously, that's there. But the knowledge of how you got there and just the work you've done, it can't really be taken away, and you can't give it to anyone else either. So it's everyone's journey on their own to get to this point. So I'll stop there. That was a lot of food for thought. I wanted to share all of that just to give you guys something to think about as you're listening to this, and really just reflect on how you want to start your fitness journey, or if you are on this, really kind of reassess why you're doing this. And that's my hope for you guys. Just one final note: I am taking clients for the month of February for my Fit Professional Transformation, the FPT program, where basically I give you the workouts, I give you meal planning, and I give you one-on-one coaching to really take you to this first phase that I talked about, the getting strong / bulking phase. Or if your focus is on cutting and you really want to just lose fat, I help with that as well. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my Instagram at Farhan Lifts and DM me, or just leave a comment in the YouTube in the YouTube comments, and we drop your Instagram and we can set up a chat after that. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you so much. if you want to get in touch, go to Instagram at Farhan Lifts, and we can start a conversation there. Once again, thank you so much, guys, for listening to this episode. I'm really excited for. I say this every time, but I really do mean this. I'm really excited for what this podcast will really mean for a lot of you guys, and how it can really help you, and how I'm hoping that I can start a movement in the right direction in terms of really creating a positive men's self-improvement channel and space and community. So that's my hope, and I really hope that this will really help you guys as well. So we'll wrap it up right there. Thank you so much, guys. This was episode 4 of the Melly Mission podcast. I'm your host, Farhan Rana, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.